I'm glad my best friend killed herself. I sat in the auditorium listening to the principal tell 300 of us that my best friend Krista had passed away the night before. The whispering started instantly, but all I could hear was the most popular guys in school, Drew, Spencer, and Philip, laughing like they were at a barbecue instead of an assembly announcing the death of a girl whose life they destroyed. Krista told me what those three did to her 3 months before she died. I went to a party and Philip was there. He was being so nice to me, Adrian, asking about my classes, making me laugh. She said, and got this faraway look like she couldn't believe she fell for his charm, almost blaming herself for what happened. But then I started feeling dizzy, so Philip offered to take me somewhere quiet. I followed him upstairs to a bedroom. She pressed her palms against her eyes like she was trying to push the memory back inside. Spencer was already there, sitting on the bed like he knew I was coming. Then Drew came in behind me and locked the door. I felt something cold spread through my chest because I knew what she was going to say next. The real nightmare began from that moment on. Spencer held her down. She fought back. Philip's laugh rang in her ears loud and clear. When it was over, she said, Philip patted my head like I was a dog and told me I should feel lucky that guys like them even noticed a girl like me. She reported it the next day, but the officer kept asking what she was wearing, how much she had to drink, if she'd ever flirted with Philip before. Because those boys had bright futures, nothing happened to them, and Krista couldn't live with the fact that they won. 3 months later, her mom called screaming and crying that she found her daughter dead. So there I sat in that auditorium staring at Philip while he laughed with his friends and rage settled into my bones. I made a promise on that plastic chair. All 3 of them were going to lose everything they cared about, and I already knew who I was going after first. Drew, the one who locked that door, the one who went along with whatever Philip said because he was desperate to belong. He had this wrestling scholarship he wouldn't shut up about. His whole future was riding on it. What he didn't know was that I'd been paying attention to things he thought nobody noticed. I'll tell you how I got him. Because watching a coward realize his future is slipping away, that part was almost worth the wait. I waited 3 days after that assembly before I made my move. I had pictures of Drew in the locker room holding a vial and syringe that definitely weren't prescribed by any doctor. Pictures of him in the bathroom stall with his shorts pulled down, needle buried in his thigh. Even had pictures of him stuffing the vials and syringes into a false bottom he'd built into his gym bag. He was taking steroids, the kind that got athletes banned for life and scholarships revoked on the spot. I confronted him outside the gym after practice. Most of the team had already left, and Drew was walking to his car alone with headphones in. He didn't see me until I stepped out and blocked his path. He pulled out one earbud and gave me this annoyed look like I was wasting his time. What do you want? I held up my phone and showed him the first photo with the vial and needle and his face in frame clear as day. He actually stopped breathing for a second. Then his head whipped around to check if anyone else was nearby, and he took 2 steps back like I'd pulled a knife on him. Where did you get that? His voice came out high and tight. I swiped to the next photo. Him, mid-injection. Then the next. The gym bag with the false bottom exposed. With each swipe, he made this sound in his throat like he was choking on something. By the last photo, he had both hands in his hair and was pacing in a tight circle. What do you want? Money? I can get you money. Just tell me how much. I put my phone away and looked at him. This was the guy who locked the door and took his turn with Krista, who walked out of that room afterward and went right back to the party like he hadn't just destroyed someone's entire existence. I don't want your money, Drew. He started talking fast, words pouring out of him like he thought quantity would make up for quality. Look, I know what this looks like, but everyone on the team is doing it. You think I'm the only one injecting? Coach practically ignores it because he wants the wins. This isn't even that serious. I let him finish his little speech before I responded. Then you won't mind if I show him the photos tonight. Drew lunged forward and grabbed my shirt with both fists. I could feel his hands shaking through the fabric and smell the panic sweat rising off his skin. Please, you can't do this to me. I shoved him off hard enough that he stumbled and almost fell, then just stood there bent over with his hands on his knees like he'd just run a marathon. The excuses died in his throat, and I watched him realize that lying wasn't going to work, so he switched tactics. It was Philip's idea, he said, and his voice cracked right down the middle. What happened to Krista? Philip planned the whole thing. Spencer and I just went along with it because that's what we always do. Philip says jump, and we ask how high. Tears and snot smeared across his face. I don't even know why he wanted her so bad. I think he liked her or something. Or maybe she shut him down at some point, and this was his way of getting back at her. I really don't know. He never told us why. He just pointed at her, and that was it. He looked at me with red eyes like he expected sympathy. I didn't want to do it. I swear I didn't want to do it. But you did. He opened his mouth to say something else, but nothing came out. So now I'm going to show everything to your coach. Drew's whole body crumpled. He dropped straight down onto his knees in the middle of the parking lot and grabbed my arm with both hands like he was praying to me. Please, he begged. I have to keep this scholarship. My dad works double shifts at the warehouse 6 days a week, and we still can't make rent half the time. My mom cleans houses until her back gives out. I'm supposed to be the one who gets out and pulls them out with me. If I lose this scholarship, my whole family loses everything. I pulled my arm free and stepped back from him. Krista doesn't get to leave this town either. She's in the ground because of what you did. He was full-on sobbing now, still on his knees in the parking lot. I'll give you money. I don't have it right now, but I can get it. I'll pick up shifts. I'll sell my car. Whatever number you want, just name it and I'll figure it out. I already told you. I don't want your money. The gym door swung open behind us, and his coach stepped out, looking from Drew on the ground to me standing over him. What the hell is going on out here? I looked down at Drew and watched him scramble to his feet, frantically trying to wipe the tears off his face before the coach could see them. He looked at me with this desperate hope in his eyes, like maybe I'd keep this between us now that we had an audience. Like maybe I'd show mercy. Actually, coach, I said, there's something you need to see. Drew lost his scholarship 3 weeks later. The school didn't mess around when it came to steroids. All those early morning practices and weekend tournaments and dreams of getting his family out of poverty, gone just like that. He tried to warn Spencer and Philip, showed up at school the day after he got the news and told them I was coming for them next. They laughed in his face, called him paranoid and pathetic. Spencer's family had money and lawyers. Philip's last name alone was enough to make people look the other way. They weren't scared of some nobody with a grudge. That was their first mistake. 2 years. That's how long I waited before I went after Spencer. Drew fell apart exactly like I knew he would, because guys like him always do when the pressure hits. But Spencer wasn't Drew. This guy had family money, lawyers on standby, and parents who treated covering up his mistakes like a full-time job. I couldn't come at him the same way I came at Drew. That would be stupid. But 2 years is a long time. Long enough for someone to get comfortable. Long enough to make a mistake. And when Spencer finally made his, I was right there waiting. I couldn't go after Spencer in high school. He didn't have much to lose, and even if he did, his parents would be there waiting. When a girl at school accused Spencer of grabbing her at a party, his mother had lunch with the principal, and suddenly, the girl transferred to a different district. When rumors started about what happened to Krista, his father made a donation to the athletic department, and those rumors died overnight. You can't destroy someone who has an army of adults ready to bury anything that makes them look bad. So I graduated, moved away, got a job, and I waited for Spencer to step out from behind his parents' protection and build a life of his own. A life with something in it he actually cared about. Something his mommy and daddy couldn't just make disappear. 2 years after graduation, I was scrolling through social media at 3 in the morning when I saw it. An engagement announcement. The woman in the photo was Eloise. Blonde hair, perfect smile, ring the size of a small country on her finger. And standing next to her with his arm around her waist like he was some kind of prize, Spencer. He had that same smug face, same dead eyes pretending to be warm for the camera. His friends and family filled the comments with heart emojis and people calling them couple goals. I stared at that photo until the sun came up. Spencer finally had something he actually cared about, something worth destroying. 3 weeks later, I moved to his city, got a job at a coffee shop 6 blocks from his house, and started learning his routine. I knew when he left for work, came home, where he went on the weekends, and that's how I found out about the other women. Yes, women, plural. I spotted one woman leaving his apartment while Eloise was at work. She wore a short dress and had her heels in hand as she did the walk of shame at 7 a.m. The next one came 2 days later. Different girl, but same situation. By the end of the first month, 18 different women had come and gone from his house and job. I had photos of him pressing women against walls in parking garages, screenshots of dating profiles he was still active on, videos of him stumbling out of hotels with girls on his arm. I talked to these women, and 3 gave me written statements. None of them knew he was engaged. 6 weeks in, Spencer finally noticed me. I was parked across from his office when he spotted my car and marched over like he was about to drag me out through the window. He slammed his palm against my window so hard the whole car shook. I rolled it down halfway. You have 5 seconds to tell me why you've been following me before I have you arrested for stalking. His voice was filled with entitlement that only comes from never hearing the word no. You don't recognize me, Spencer? He sneered. Should I? You look like every other nobody I've ever met. My name is Adrian. I was Krista's best friend. Recognition hit him like a truck. His eyes went wide for half a second. Then he laughed. Are you serious right now? You're still crying about that? Dude, that was years ago. Get over it. He crossed his arms and looked down at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. I don't know what you think you're doing here, but let me make something very clear. I am not Drew. You can't scare me with whatever little scheme you've cooked up. My family has more lawyers than you have brain cells. One phone call, and I'll have a restraining order that follows you for the rest of your pathetic existence. This guy loved the sound of his own voice, but I knew he would shut up the second he saw what I had in store. I pulled out my phone and held it up to show a photo of him leaving a hotel with a redhead. His face went white. What is that? It wasn't a question. More like a threat. I swiped to a video of him making out with someone in an elevator. With each swipe, Spencer's expression cracked a little more. By the time I got to the written statements, his whole body was shaking. You think this scares me? His voice came out thin. Eloise knows who I am. She knows I would never do anything to hurt her. She trusts me completely. Does she know about the girl who left your apartment at 7 in the morning? That was my cousin visiting from out of town. Your cousin. Right. What about Friday's visitor? Or the 18 other women I've seen? Are they all cousins too? Must be a big family. Spencer lunged forward and grabbed my shirt through the window. I could smell the expensive cologne mixed with the sour stench of fear. Listen to me, you little nobody. I don't care what you think you have. None of it matters. None of it will ever matter. Do you know why? He yanked me closer. Because people like me always win. Always. My father plays golf with judges. My mother has lunch with the mayor's wife every week. I could run someone over in broad daylight and walk away without a scratch. So whatever pathetic revenge fantasy you've been nursing for 2 years, let it go. You can't touch me. You never could. I peeled his fingers off my shirt one by one. I don't have to prove what you did to Krista. I just have to prove you're a cheater. And I have more than enough for that. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. I rolled up my window and drove away while he stood frozen on the sidewalk. What he didn't know was that I knew his engagement party was on Saturday. 30 minutes before it started, I planned to send everything to Eloise. That should give everyone time to arrive and get comfortable before the show. So Saturday night rolled around, and I parked across from the venue watching guests arrive in their expensive clothes. Spencer's whole family was there. Eloise's parents, friends, co-workers, everyone who mattered in their lives gathered to celebrate what they thought was true love. At exactly 30 minutes past start time, I sent all of it to Eloise. Through the windows, I watched her pull out her phone, watched her smile fade as she started scrolling, watched the color drain from her face as she clicked through photo after photo. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her whole body started trembling. Then she looked up and found Spencer across the room laughing with his friends like he didn't have a care in the world. The sound that came out of her wasn't quite human. Something between a scream and a sob that cut through the music and made every single person in that room turn to look at her. She marched straight toward Spencer with her phone raised like a weapon. What is this? She shoved the phone in his face. What is this, Spencer? He grabbed her wrist and tried to pull her toward a corner, but she threw his arm off of her. Baby, calm down. Whatever that is, someone's just trying to mess with us. Let's talk about this privately. Privately? You want to talk privately about the 18 women you've been sleeping with while I planned our wedding? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Spencer's mother pressed her hand to her chest like she was having a heart attack. His father's face went from confused to furious in half a second. Eloise, please. Spencer reached for her again. Those photos are fake. Someone photoshopped them. This is obviously some kind of setup. A setup? A setup? She scrolled to one of the written statements and read it out loud. I've been seeing Spencer for 4 months. He told me he was single and looking for something serious. I had no idea he was engaged until someone showed me the announcement. Her voice cracked on the last word. Is that fake too, Spencer? The room was dead silent. Every eye fixed on Spencer as he stood there, being unable to come up with a lie fast enough. Eloise's father stepped forward with murder in his eyes, but her mother held him back. 4 months. Eloise's voice dropped to something broken and quiet. I was picking out flower arrangements and tasting wedding cakes, and you were sleeping with someone else for 4 months. While I trusted you. While I defended you to everyone who said you weren't good enough for me. Tears were streaming down her face now. I loved you. I loved you so much I ignored every red flag, every late night, and every suspicious text. Every time something felt wrong, I told myself I was being paranoid, because you would never hurt me like that. She pulled the ring off her finger. For a moment, she just stared at it. Then she threw it at Spencer's chest so hard he stumbled backward. I hope she was worth it. I hope they were worth it because you just lost the only person who believed you could be good. She turned and walked toward the exit. Spencer lunged after her. Eloise, wait. Please. I can explain everything. His father grabbed his arm and yanked him back. Don't you dare, he hissed loud enough for half the room to hear. Don't you dare make this worse than you already have. Do you have any idea what you've done? In front of everyone? Her family will never do business with us again. This family's reputation is destroyed because you couldn't keep your hands to yourself. He shoved Spencer away from him. You're done. Do you hear me? Done. Don't bother coming home. Don't bother calling. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a son anymore. Spencer stood in the middle of that room surrounded by 200 people who were all staring at him like he was garbage. His mother wouldn't even look at him. His friends had already started backing away. The girl he thought he was going to marry was gone. The safety net he'd relied on his entire life had just been ripped out from under him in front of everyone who mattered. I watched him stand there alone in the middle of that room with nowhere to go and no one coming to save him. It felt good. Not as good as I thought it would, but good enough to keep going. 2 down. 1 to go. Spencer was destroyed with his fiancée gone and his father done with him. Philip was the next, but he was also the hardest. Some people think having rich parents and a powerful last name makes them untouchable. Philip certainly did. For 5 years, I hit nothing but walls while he graduated law school and landed his dream job like karma forgot he existed. But here's the thing about people who think they're invincible. They stop watching their backs. They forget that the people they stepped on are still out there. And sometimes those people pick up the phone. The call I got changed everything. You'll never guess who was on the other end ready to help me finally bring Philip down. That night after the engagement party, I drove back to my apartment and sat in the dark for hours. I should have felt like celebrating. Spencer's life was in pieces, his fiancée was gone, and his father had disowned him in front of 200 people. But all I could think about was Krista. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the last photo I had of her. We were at a coffee shop 2 weeks before she died. She was laughing at me accidentally calling asparagus asparagoose, and her eyes were actually bright for once. That was the last time I saw her smile. I stared at that photo until the screen went dark. 2 of them were destroyed, but she was still gone. She was always going to be gone. And the one who started it all was still out there living his best life like he hadn't shattered hers into a million pieces. The next 5 years were the hardest of my life. I became obsessed with Philip in a way that scared me sometimes. I tracked his social media constantly, and every update made me want to put my fist through a wall. He went to law school and graduated with honors. Then he got accepted to one of the most prestigious firms in the state. He'd actually built a life for himself where he could shake hands with judges and politicians at charity events while wearing suits that cost more than my rent. Every photo made me sick, but I couldn't stop looking. I'd stay up until 5 a.m., scrolling through his posts and imagining all the ways I could bring him down. Then I'd wake up the next morning and realize I still had nothing. I tried everything. I reached out to journalists, but Philip's family had connections at every major outlet. I contacted lawyers, but nobody wanted to touch a case against a family that powerful. I even tried to find the police report from when Krista reported what happened, but it had vanished from the system like it never existed. Every door I knocked on slammed in my face. Every lead dried up before I could follow it. Philip's parents had spent years building walls around their son, and I couldn't find a single crack. He passed the bar on his first try. He got engaged to some senator's daughter. He bought a house in the nicest part of the city. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering if I was wasting my life, if Krista would even want me to keep going. But then I'd remember Philip laughing at that assembly, the way he patted her head like she was a dog, and the rage would come flooding back. 5 years and 2 months after Spencer's engagement party, my phone rang at 10 p.m. from an unknown number. I didn't hesitate answering, knowing this was going to be my big break. Adrian? It's Drew. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Drew. The first one I destroyed. I hadn't heard from him since high school. How did you get this number? I've been looking for you for 6 months. He sounded different. Tired. Like the years had ground him down. Why? Because I'm ready to talk. About Philip. About what really happened. This was going to blow the whole thing wide open. We met at a diner the next day. I barely recognized him. The cocky athlete was gone. In his place was a hollow-eyed man in wrinkled clothes who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. It was weird seeing how much I had destroyed his life. I wondered if Spencer's life had gotten this bad as well. I really hoped it did, because it would mean Krista was getting some form of justice. After you destroyed my scholarship, everything fell apart, Drew said. My parents couldn't afford college. They didn't hide how disappointed they were in me. With college off the table, I got into construction and worked there until I blew my back out. I've been bouncing around ever since. He never amounted to anything. But you know what the worst part is? When everything went down, Philip dropped me like I was nothing. He called me pathetic, said I was always the weakest link, just pointed at me and laughed. We were friends for 7 years, man. I spent 7 years doing whatever he told me, and the second I became a problem, he threw me away. If he was looking for any sort of sympathy, he wasn't getting an ounce out of me. I stared at him with the most stoic expression I could muster. I didn't regret a single thing I did to him. You said you were ready to talk about Philip, so talk. Drew sighed and pulled out his phone and set it on the table. I have something I've been holding on to since that night. I was too scared to use it back then, but I've got nothing left to lose, and Philip has everything to lose. He played the recording. It started with Philip saying, "Lock the door. This is going to be fun." Then Spencer laughing like they were about to play a prank on someone. My blood went cold when I heard Krista's voice. It had been so long since I heard her voice, but I had never heard it sound like this before. Her voice came out small and confused, asking what was going on. She asked Drew why he locked the door and why they were looking at her like that. Like she was their prey and they were hungry, rabid animals. She backed up as they approached her, and she bumped into furniture trying to get away from them. "Relax," Philip said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "You should be flattered. Guys like us don't usually notice girls like you." Spencer made a joke about how other girls would kill to be in her position. Drew laughed in the background, and then Krista started begging. Please stop. Please don't do this." Her voice cracked on every word. She kept saying she wanted to go home. She kept asking them to just let her leave. I felt gross watching this happen. Part of me wanted to stop and forget this happened, but the other part of me wanted to use this as motivation to destroy Philip even more. Ruin his life, like he had ruined hers. "Shh," Philip whispered, like he was soothing a scared animal. "Don't ruin this." "Stop being so dramatic," Spencer said, and actually sounded annoyed. They were laughing the entire time, genuinely laughing like this was the funniest thing that had ever happened to them. Like her fear was entertainment, and her tears were part of the game. Philip kept making comments about how pretty she looked when she cried, how he wished she'd fight back a little more because it was more exciting that way. And through all of it, I could hear Krista slowly breaking. Her begging turned to crying. Her crying turned to this horrible silence where she just stopped fighting altogether. "There we go," Philip said softly. "That's better. Good girl." At the end, his voice came through clear as day. "Clean her up and get her out of here." Spencer responded with, "Did you see her face? She looked like a broken toy." And they all laughed again. The recording ended and I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there staring at Drew's phone while something inside me shattered into pieces I knew I'd never put back together. My best friend. The girl who trusted me with everything. She died with those voices in her head. She died believing she was nothing because 3 monsters told her she was, while they laughed about it. I didn't even notice when Drew had switched to the Messages app and showed me texts in their group chat the day after Krista reported them to the police. Philip said, "She actually thought someone would believe her." Spencer replied, "She was a good fuck. She should be happy." Drew texted, "What if the police investigate?" Philip said, "They won't. My dad plays golf with the police chief. Who do you think they're going to believe?" Spencer said, "Besides, it's not like we ruined her. We made her more interesting. Now she has a story to tell." I actually swallowed my vomit. My hands were shaking so bad and my head was so dizzy. Why her? I just didn't get it. My voice came out broken. What did she do to him? Why did he want to hurt her so bad? Drew shook his head slowly. "I don't know. He never told us. We never asked. One minute we were drinking and the next minute Philip pointed at her across the room and said, 'That one. That's it. That's all it took.' No, there had to be a reason. A logical explanation. Some deep, twisted motive even. I refused to believe that's all it took. I didn't know the answer I desperately wanted would be so much worse. Drew let me sit with it for a while. He didn't say anything. He just waited until I wiped my face and looked up at him with something new in my eyes. Purpose. It was time to bury Philip. We spent the next 3 weeks building our case. Drew wrote out everything. Names, dates, times, what each of them did and said. I helped him put it together in a way that couldn't be ignored. We made copies of the recording and saved them in 4 different places because I wasn't taking any chances. Drew pulled the old texts from a phone he'd kept in a drawer for years. Screenshots of every joke they made about her. Every comment about how she'd never talk. Every laughing response to Philip's sick words about that night. When we had everything, we sat in my apartment and stared at the pile on my kitchen table. "Where do we send it?" Drew asked. I'd already made the list. Philip's law school. The bosses at his fancy new firm. The State Bar Association that decides who gets to be a lawyer. Everyone standing between Philip and the future he thought he deserved. We sent everything by mail, and then we waited. The law school responded first. They opened an investigation into whether Philip broke their rules. 2 days later, the firm called him in for a meeting and took back their job offer until they knew more. The Bar Association sent a letter telling Philip he had to come in and explain himself before they'd let him practice law. One by one, the doors he'd spent years opening started closing in his face. The walls were finally coming down. Philip didn't take long to figure out who was behind it. I knew he'd come for me eventually. Guys like him always need to have the last word, always need to remind you they're above you in every way that matters. But he didn't understand that this wasn't high school anymore. This wasn't small-town cops who played golf with his daddy. The Bar Association doesn't care how much money your family has when there's a recording of you laughing while a girl begs you to stop. Philip thought he was coming to threaten me into silence. He had no idea he was walking into the moment I'd been waiting 7 years for. But what he told me about why he chose Krista, it was worse than anything I could have imagined. I spent the next 3 days waiting for the other shoe to drop. Philip wasn't the type to go quietly. Drew had warned me that Philip would come for me the second he figured out who was behind the complaints. He's not like Spencer, Drew said before we parted ways at the diner. Spencer was all bark. Philip actually bites. I believed him. I'd seen what Philip was capable of when he thought no one was watching. Now I was about to see what he was capable of when he had nothing left to lose. I was sitting in my apartment on day 3 when I heard footsteps in the hallway. They were heavy and purposeful. It almost felt like death had come to collect my soul. But I knew it was Philip before the knock even came. And Philip was nowhere near as scary as death. He was just an entitled, spoiled brat who never deserved anything he had. He pounded 3 times and hard on my door. I took my time getting up. Let him wait. Let him feel what it's like to not get what he wants the second he wants it. When I finally opened the door, Philip was standing there in a suit. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were calm, controlled, like he'd already figured out how this conversation was going to end, and he was just going through the motions. Adrian. He said my name like it was something dirty. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe and crossed my arms. So, talk. He pushed past me into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. His eyes scanned the small space with obvious disgust. The second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, the stack of bills on my kitchen counter. Everything about my life was beneath him, and he wanted me to know it. You think you're clever, don't you? He turned to face me with his hands in his pockets. He was casual, like we were old friends catching up. Sending all that stuff to my firm, to the Bar Association. You really thought that was going to work? It already is working. Your firm pulled their offer. The bar opened an investigation. Seems like it's working pretty well, actually. Philip laughed. Not the nervous laugh Drew had when I cornered him. Not the panicked laugh Spencer made when his world fell apart either. This was genuine amusement, as if I'd just told him a joke he found genuinely funny. You really don't get how the world works, do you? He took a step closer. My parents have been cleaning up messes for me since I was 12 years old. This is just another mess. A bigger one, sure, but still just a mess. They've already got lawyers working on it. Character witnesses lined up. A whole strategy to make this go away. He smiled that same smile I remembered from high school, the one he wore at the assembly where they announced my best friend's death. By this time next month, I'll have my license and a job at an even better firm, and you'll still be here in this dump wondering why you wasted 7 years of your life. I didn't flinch, didn't look away, just held his gaze and said the thing I knew would hit him hardest. This isn't small-town cops, Philip. The Bar Association doesn't care about your last name. They have a formal complaint with evidence, a recording, texts, a written statement from someone who was in that room. I handed everything needed to incriminate you on a silver platter, and the best part is that they have to investigate. It's not optional, and once they hear what's on that recording, I shook my head slowly. There's no amount of money that makes that go away. Something flickered behind his eyes, the first crack in that perfect confidence. He covered it quickly, but I saw it. I saw him realize for the first time that maybe this wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. That recording doesn't prove anything, he said, but his voice was tighter now. It's just audio. Could be anyone. Could be edited. My lawyers will tear it apart. Your lawyers can try, but the bar doesn't need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They just need to believe you're not morally fit to practice law. And I think a recording of you telling a crying girl to be quiet while you assault her is going to make that pretty clear. Philip's jaw twitched. His hands came out of his pockets and curled into fists at his sides. For a second, I thought he might actually hit me. Part of me wanted him to. I wanted him to give me a reason to fight back after 7 years of swallowing my rage. But he didn't. He just stood there, breathing hard and staring at me like he was trying to figure out how someone like me had managed to corner someone like him. Why? The word came out sharp, accusatory. Why do you even care this much? She wasn't your girlfriend. She wasn't your sister. She was just some girl you knew in high school. Why would you throw away 7 years of your life for her? Because she was my best friend. She trusted me, and she died thinking nobody cared about what happened to her. The words were thick in my mouth. You laughed at her death, Philip. You sat in that auditorium and laughed while the principal told us she was dead. He rolled his eyes. This guy had never experienced empathy before in his life. Do you even remember her name? I asked. Who cares? They're all the same. Her name was Krista. Whatever. The casualness of it made my blood boil. 7 years and he couldn't even remember her name. Couldn't even pretend to care about the life he destroyed. Why her? The question I'd been carrying for 7 years finally came out. Out of everyone at that party, why did you pick Krista? What did she ever do to you? Philip stared at me for a long moment. Then his face did something I didn't expect. It softened. Not into guilt or shame, but into something worse. Amusement. His eyes actually lit up. The corners of his mouth curled into this slow smile that made my skin crawl. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying watching me need to know. My pain was entertaining to him even now. You really want to know? I've wanted to know for 7 years. He tilted his head to the side and smiled. A real smile. The kind that reaches your eyes. And then he said the words, because the sun was out. I blinked. What? The sun was out. He shrugged like he was explaining why he ordered a particular drink at a bar. That's it. That's the whole story. My whole body went cold. That's not a reason. Sure it is. The sun was out. That's a reason. You destroyed her life because of the sun? I didn't destroy anything. She did that to herself. All that drama afterward, the cops, the crying, that was her choice. I just had a little fun at a party. He checked his watch like he had somewhere better to be. She could have moved on, gotten over it. Instead, she made it her whole personality, and then she made it yours too. That's not my fault. I couldn't breathe. For 7 years, I'd been searching for a reason. Some twisted logic that would explain why Philip chose Krista. Maybe she rejected him once. Maybe she embarrassed him somehow. Maybe there was something between them I didn't know about. I needed there to be a reason, because if there was a reason, then maybe she could have avoided it. Maybe if she'd done something different that night, she'd still be alive. But there was no reason. Philip didn't pick Krista because of who she was. He picked her because the sun was out. There was nothing she could have done differently. Nothing that would have saved her. She was just unlucky. That's all. Just unlucky. You're a monster, I said, and my voice came out hollow. I'm a realist. The world is full of people who take what they want and people who let them. Your friend was the second kind. That's not my problem. He headed for the door, but stopped with his hand on the knob. Drop this, Adrian. Walk away while you still can. My parents are going to make this disappear, and when they do, I'm going to remember who tried to ruin my life. You don't want to be on my list. He left without waiting for a response. The door clicked shut behind him, and I stood alone in my apartment trying to process what he'd just told me. Because the sun was out. That was it. That was the reason my best friend was dead. 3 weeks later, I got the call. The Bar Association denied Philip's license. They said he didn't meet the moral character requirements to practice law. The firm made it official the same day. No job, no license, no future in law. Philip's parents tried everything. More lawyers, more favors, more threats. But the recording was too clear, and the evidence was too strong. For once in his life, Philip couldn't make this disappear. The texts started that same night. You ruined my life. I know where you live. This isn't over. You're going to regret this. Then the calls. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Heavy breathing. Long silences. Sometimes he'd talk. Tell me all the things he was going to do to me. How his family still had connections. How I'd never be safe. How he was going to make me pay for what I took from him. I didn't respond to any of it. I just screenshotted everything and saved the voicemails. More evidence if I ever needed it. But I wasn't stupid. I knew what Philip was capable of when he felt cornered. Drew warned me that Philip actually bites, and I believed him. So 3 days after the bar made their decision, I packed everything I owned into my car and left town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Just drove until the city was a dot in my rearview mirror and kept driving until I hit a place where nobody knew my name or my face or what I'd spent the last 7 years doing.